Hi, and welcome back to the channel. It's January 5th and the first day of online learning for the kids back to school. Yeah, sure everyone else is experiencing the same thing as I am this morning, fixing combines, actually that was wrong, that'd be fixing computers, shows you what's on my brain today. Fixing computers, fixing iPads, downloading things, not downloading things because the internet doesn't work at the school, blah, blah, blah. It's been on and on. Kids crying, kids yelling, all frustrated. But it's now lunchtime. We've got everybody going. Everyone's happy and excited to be back learning again, which is great. But I quickly realized that doing this at home doesn't give you a lot of good content for a Wednesday video. So I decided I would do a comparison video this week. We package two different Draper heads with our combines when we sell Lexions to customers. And they're the same, but they're different. And I thought I'd go through how they work, why I would pick one over the other to go to certain customers. And those two heads are a Claas Convio, which has been out for a couple of years now. Been a very good head for me over the last couple of years. Customers have really liked it. And then there's the Macdon FD1 series that's also been out for a couple seasons now. Old reliable, it's simple, it's easy. Macdon's been doing this for many years with many predecessors to this series ahead, and they just work. So I thought I'd do this video comparing the two just to show you what I sort of pick either way to be able to direct a customer to decide on one or the other. Come along for the ride, check it out, and hopefully you like it. So we'll get into some comparison here with these two heads. Basically, I want to touch on a bunch of different areas here. The first one will be just the main difference. Convio is a rigid back head. The knife is then a full flex out in front, and it's hydraulically controlled to be able to control how much down pressure we put down on the knife. The Macdon is a floating head. It relies on 4 big springs to put some pressure down on the ground, and as it moves through the field, it floats. To get it into a flex situation, it turns into a 3-section system within the head with 2 hinge points that allow the wings to be able to flex. The advantage of the two, full flex in certain circumstances allows you to follow the ground a little bit better. Some areas in a field where there's a sharp divot of some sort, the flex would be able to go down in and get some of that crop. Whereas the 3-section flex on the Macdon, it might bridge across the top of it and it would miss some of that. So that's one of the conditions that I would say to a customer: do you have sharp knolls? Do you have gentle knolls? And that's definitely a position where you would decide to choose between either of these machines. To put each head into rigid or flex are completely different ways of doing it. The Macdon, there are 4 levers on the outside of the machine that you have to get out when you put it on the combine, that you would flip the 2 levers to put it into float from the feeder house. And then there's 2 levers that you flip to be able to put it into flex. On the other side, the Convio, you can go from flex to rigid right from the cab. It's a setting that you would change inside the cab. Some other things to compare: Draper speeds. Macdon standard is a valve on the head that you would turn from 0 to 10. It is now optional to put a turn switch into the cab to be able to control the speed of the Drapers. The Convio is completely controlled through the CBUS screen on the Lexion combines. Everything is integrated into the joystick, where if you need to slow the belts down, you pull a trigger on the back of the joystick. If you need to stop the Draper belts, if something's starting to come in and you don't want it to, you flip the switch the other way. You have full control of it there, and you've also got full control of whether you put it in auto belt speed, or you can actually manually set the belt speeds from there as well. So just a little different way of doing things that way. Both reels are extremely close to the knife. Macdon is probably the better of the two. Actually, Macdon is the better of the two. With the 3-section hinge and the center reel, it maintains a 2.5-inch gap basically from that knife all of the time, keeping that knife to reel contact the closest out of anything else on the industry, I would think. The Convio on the other side of things, it allows the reel to get very close to the knife, but when it is in flex mode, it's impossible to have it always that close. The knife is always flexing down and away from the reel, and that would be the one place that it has some difficulties with, is in short crop, that it needs to have that distance kept as tight as possible. So that's one advantage that the Macdon might have over the Convio at that point. So next we'll go into knife drive. On the Macdon, it is a hydraulically driven knife through a belt. So the hydraulic comes across to the left or right hand side, depending if it's a single or double drive. The belt transfers from that hydraulic motor down to the wobble box, and it then drives the knife from that side. 30, 35, and 40 are all single drive. It is optional to go double drive on the 40, and then the 45 is a double drive. So you would have 2 hydraulic motors on the double drives, one feeding off of either side. On the Convio, it is a shaft-driven system. So through our gearbox on the left-hand side that runs all the hydraulic motors and everything to be able to run the reel and the belt speed, there are actually a shaft that runs the entire width of the machine to the left and to the right. The 30-foot is a single drive, optional double drive. 35, 40, and 45 are all double drive knives. It puts so much power to the front of that knife drive to be able to cut through some of the finer crops that would sometimes jam up on another head. So I would say the positive drive force on the Convio is a plus on this head for that. The tractive force on the reel. We mentioned the reel could get down low. The Macdon and the Convio both have an over-center cam that allows it to get underneath the crop, pull it up onto the draper, and then gently leave it there and then flip over and come back around. The tractive force on the new Macdon heads is very noticeably different from previous models. It will paw and grab everything out in front of you, even with the fingers touching the ground if it gets to that by accident. The Convio is exactly the same way. The Convio, however, has a tractive force relief, if you want to call it that. As the fingers are rotating through and they start to get bound up or pushed into relief because they can't move, that system will automatically lift the reel slightly to be able to get the tractive force back and then put it back down into the low crop on the ground to be able to try and keep pulling with it. So I would put them on an equal for what they're capable of doing. Slight edge maybe to the Convio just for the fact that it has that relief that it can lift up and out of the way to be able to help it get that tractive force back again. So the next thing to look at is header tip, controlling that knife angle so that it can ride a little higher up the ground or a little closer. Macdon sort of invented the whole hydraulic top link for doing these heads with. Been doing it for years. Very simple. The cylinder's built between the adapter and the head, and no matter what color combine you have, you can tip that knife forward and backwards. It was a game changer when they first came out with it, and they still have that within their units today. The Convio, being an OEM head, we can't put it on anybody else's units, so therefore we rely on the cylinder on the top of the feeder house that we've always been able to control feeder house tip with on our feeder house. Both are done from an internal switch from the cab. Neither one of them is any different from the other, from the fact that you can do it on the fly or anything on the go. It's just two different ways of doing it. One's built into the head, one is not. So auto contour with these heads are done completely different. So when you take the Macdon head and put it into float, whether you are cutting on the ground doing soybeans or you were cutting high doing wheat, there is a single sensor in the center of the header that has a cable attached to it that tells the combine the position of where that is riding within the range 0 to 4. Based on that sensor position, that is what tells our feeder house to lift up and down to be able to keep it centered within that range of motion. And that's what controls the header height with it. On the Convio, we're using sensors. We're using several sensors across the knife. In flex mode, every single hydraulic that controls the flex of that knife has a sensor into it. When we're running in rigid mode, we have 6 hockey sticks that hang down from the head, and that's what controls our header height with that. The one benefit with the new Convios over some of the older heads that had similar styling was that we no longer have to take the hockey sticks off. We can actually leave them in place for the season, and that helps speed things up, makes things simpler. But it's also one of the features that allows, when we pick up, when we're in flex mode, the knife automatically retracts up to the reel, and it's a function of having those hockey sticks on that allows it to do that. So as well as auto contour, we've also have auto reel control. So both heads are capable of having auto reel speed, matches the ground speed of the combine, plus or minus whatever you set it for your correction that you would like there for it to go. The Convio also has fore and aft as well as height that you can preset different positions for different settings through the field. Again, a good example is the down wheat. You will be in rigid with your reel probably sitting up fairly high, just touching the tops of the wheat heads. When you need to go down into that lower crop, you click the one button, the knife goes into full flex. At that point, the reel would also drop and push forward automatically out to a preset spot that you have that would be able to get down and grab some of that crop for you. The Macdon, you would click the button to push more weight onto the knife, get it down to the ground. You would manually push the reel down and out a little bit. Again, it's still doable. It's not as auto as what the Convio is. So some of the modes that we have on the Convio is a small grain rigid. You have 2 different cutting heights that you can run a completely rigid knife all the time. You can toggle between those 2 preset heights. Works great for standing crop. Lodge small grain flex is the other version. This is the one I've been talking about, where you cut rigid for majority of your crop. You get into a down position where there's wheat on the ground. You click the button down to put it into the other setting, and it automatically goes into full flex. It'll ride down along the ground underneath all that laden crop. When you come out, you push the button and it comes back up again. The third is flex mode. This is where you have 2 preset settings that you can set within a flex. Typically one is set at high so that you've got full flex range. The second one would be set where you would like to have the knife to reel contact a little bit closer, and you have the ability to toggle between those on the joystick. The last one is the newest to us, and that's the auto flex. It is going to automatically maintain the correct position of the head up and down, left and right, to keep the knife in the middle position the best possible that it can. It's doing everything automatically off the sensors. There's only one cutting height. You literally put it down on the ground and it will do everything else automatically from there. The Macdon side of things, there's basically one setting for this, maybe 2 if you want to classify it as that. Macdon has a set of locking switches that lock the frame to the actual head. This is done for transport so that it doesn't interfere with header wagons and so on. When you unlock that, you are automatically in a flex position. You've got 4.8 degrees worth of flex left and right, and you've got upwards of 8 inches of up and down travel to be able to handle conditions in front of you. That's in rigid mode. To be able to cut high, if you wanted to cut 5 or 6 inches off the ground to be able to do wheat, there are stabilizer wheels that we would put down on the ground, and then we use the hydraulic cylinder to be able to tip forward and backwards to be able to control where our actual cutting height is. Then you take it one step further. The pressure gauge that sits on the front of the head, the 0 to 4, that actually is our auto contouring up and down position for the feeder house. We would set 2 different positions with this. I typically set one at 1.5, which is a very light weight, and I typically set one at 3.5, which is a fairly heavy weight. So 1.5, the height will sit at the knife that you've set it at, 4, 5, 6, 8 inches, wherever it is running on the wheels. When you need to go down to be able to get crop within that field that is down, you would click the button, which would then put it into the heavier setting, which will then override the wheels with the springs, push the springs up, the knife goes down to the ground, you can get underneath the crop, and then when you come out, you can be able to reset back to your cutting height. So basically, both machines are capable of doing very similar things. One is a more electronic version of it, automatic from the cab. The other one is a more manual version of it, and you do from some mechanical settings on the outside of the machine. So basically, if you're looking at these two heads, the determining factors that I would say to you as a customer is, what are your soils like? Are they light and fluffy, or are they firm? If they're light and fluffy, I would tend to drive you away from the Macdon, just because it's a bit more difficult to set sometimes, whereas the Convio is quite easily. Are you doing a lot of edible beans where it is extremely important to get a full flex knife down on the ground? If yes, the Convio might be a better option, but the Macdon will still do a tremendous job in edible beans. And number 3, do you need to have a complex head, or is a simplistic head with 1 or 2 sensors on it going to do what you need it to do in your operation? Those 3 things are going to drive you as to what machine you're going to potentially look to buy. Last year was a Convio year. We had most of our machines go Convio, but every one of those customers were doing high valued edible beans. This year, I've got every machine but one went Macdon, and they are all big grain machines, fairly flat ground, firm ground, and they've had Macdon in the past, and they have been tried and true and tested and ran amazingly for them, and had no reason to look at anything else. So that's sort of a breakdown of these heads. Very clear. I don't have a favorite. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, as I keep saying. I just think that they have their own little niches that it's potentially beneficial to go that way for our customers. So there you have it, a quick overview and explanation of how these two Draper heads work. Hopefully understand a little bit better as to how I would pick and choose which head goes where in the province and to which type of customers. As I said, they're both tremendous heads. They both do a great job. I'd put them in the top segment of the Draper head series on the market right at the moment. So it's just a matter of us as salespeople directing them to where they need to go for what the customer best needs. I'd like to thank Claas and Macdon for allowing me to use the animations that we had in this video. Reached out to them the other day, and both of them had 0 issues with it. So thank you very much to them. Again, I don't take any credit for those animations. They were all produced and done by those individual companies. So, but I do think that they definitely help show what's going on a little bit better than just a simple video or a walk around on a head. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you'll comment down below and let me know how I'm doing with these videos, whether you like them, whether you don't, whether you'd like to see some more of these comparison videos. I did have a request to do some tracks, comparisons between the 5 major brands of combines. It's going to be a bit difficult as 2 of the brands have said no, that I can't use any of their animations and stuff like that, so I'll have to maybe do some of it on my own. But the other ones did say that I could. So we'll try and save that for an up and coming video here in the next month or so. But if you did like the video, please subscribe. It would really help the channel for me. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.